taught the wrong things for a very long time? How many believe that those things that we've been taught in error even subconsciously control how we think? Here is your Missouri oath of office. And I'm going to read it with you because it's important that you know what it says. Because I'm going to show you that even your own government is lying to you about that oath of office. I do solemnly or swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Missouri, and faithfully perform the duties of my office, and that I will not knowingly receive, directly or indirectly, any money or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office other than compensation allowed by law. Okay? Your politicians are not allowed to have special interest money. I wonder how many people in Missouri know that. Because I'm thinking you might enforce some different things about your politicians if you actually read the oath of office. Now, in this oath of office, what are these people promising to do? They are promising to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Missouri. Other than promising not to take any money from special interest or bribes or otherwise. These are the only two promises that are made to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Missouri. Now I want to ask you, just think about it. What is missing from that promise?
The remedy.
They are not promising to keep you safe. They are not promising to keep you healthy. Nor are they taking a promise to enforce the law. Now it's important that you recognize that. Because they're promises to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Missouri. So when a law is created by your legislature that is not compliant with the Constitution, do they have a promise or an obligation to follow that law? No, because they're promises to the Constitution, not to the law. Why? Because a promise to the law is a conflict of interest. Because your legislatures could create a law through ignorance or malignance that is contrary to your Constitution. And if that's the problem, and they've taken an oath to the law, now they have a question, don't they? Because you can't support a law that's contrary to the Constitution and support the Constitution at the same time. This is a very important principle that we must grasp. Now let me show you what is on the Missouri Secretary of State website. It is the Missouri State Archives Finding Aid 5.3, and it is a record of the oaths of office taken. I even put the website up there so you can find it if you want to. It is the archive of the oaths of office. And when you scroll down this page, it explains to you about the oath of office. And let me read it to you. Oath of office and oaths of office are as the name implies. After being elected, candidates take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and also to abide by the laws of the state of Missouri. Is that what that oath says? No. Does that explanation tell you that they take an oath to support the Constitution of the state of Missouri? No. Your state government is lying to you about the oath, which creates confusion in the body of the people, When you will hear people, even like your sheriff or your police, you say, I took an oath to support the law. No, you didn't. But do you see how these lies can affect the way the people of Missouri think? The people of Missouri, from the Secretary of State, believe that you don't support the Constitution of the state of Missouri, but instead support the laws. Do you know what that actually establishes in the mind of the people of Missouri? That your legislator has unlimited authority to create whatever laws they want as long as they have a majority behind them. That they themselves are not limited and defined or controlled by the Constitution of the state of Missouri. And I think that it is glaringly obvious the omission in this direction. Do you know it takes more words to say what they said than to say to support the Constitution of the state of Missouri?
Yeah.
Which means, and I'll just leave it up to you, is that an intentional deception?
Sure.
Definitely.
Before taking oath of office, all civil and military officers in this state shall take and subscribe to an oath or affirmation to support the Constitution of the United States and of this state. See, I went searching. I saw this on your Secretary of State website, and I thought, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe they're referring to an oath that, applies to somebody else. Even your state constitution, Article 7, Section 9 says everybody takes the oath to the U.S. Constitution and to the state. None of your oaths say to the law. Every state constitution has a Bill of Rights, a Declaration of Rights, and it's always the first section. And Missouri is no exception. What's interesting is we always have this argument, with the talking heads and the think tanks and the lawyers and the professors. Does the U.S. Bill of Rights control the states? That's not a right question. That's a false premise. You have a state constitution. And your state constitutions have their own Bill of Rights. Your own Bill of Rights not only mirrors the U.S. Constitution, but is actually better than the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution because it is more clear as to the rights of the people. You don't need the U.S. Bill of Rights. The U.S. Bill of Rights is a reminder to the people to not allow the federal government to come and take our rights. Your state says what the government's authority is, and your Declaration of Rights enshrines the rights of the people and puts up a big flashing neon stop sign for your state government. This running to the U.S. Constitution to solve all our problems is part of the problem because it takes our eyes off of the state constitution, takes our eyes off the limit and control of the state government, and keeps us enamored, keeps us focused and entranced by the Emerald City of Washington, D.C. And we lose all power when that happens. Let's just do a little exercise here. Do you have more control over your county commissioner or your U.S. House rep?
County commissioner.
That's logical, right? Your county commissioner. If you don't, that's your fault. Because your county commissioner lives in your neighborhood. You can go to your county commissioner's house. You can go invite your county commissioner to breakfast. You can go discuss with your county commissioner how they're supposed to do things, whether you like what they're doing or not like what they're doing. You can attend county commissioner meetings in person. How many of you have the resources and the time to fly to Washington, D.C. and speak to your house rep? And if you did, how much consideration would your house rep give you? Because, by the way, we don't follow the Constitution when it comes to house reps either. Each district is supposed to not be more than 30,000 people. There's supposed to be a representative in the House of Representatives for every 30,000 people. Your house rep cannot represent you. And you don't have control over them. Do you have more control over your state legislator or your U.S. senator? We need to wake up. Do you have more control over your state senator or your state senator or U.S. senator?
Oh, state.
State, obviously. Do you have more control over your governor or the president of the United States?
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's not your governor's fault. Do you have more control over your sheriff or the U.S. Attorney General? So why do we spend so much time and all of our resources running around campaigning for federal politicians and we completely ignore our state and local governments? That's where all your power rests. And we've been deceived to secure power in the hands of the wrong people.
For sure.
All government, Section 2, Article 1, all constitutional government is intended to promote the general welfare of the people. That all persons have a natural right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and the enjoyment of the gains of their own industry. Can I mention to you that it is in your state constitution that if the government regulates your ability and your business, they are violating Article 1, Section 2. Because you have an inherent, natural right to the enjoyment of the gains of your industry. And you also have an inherent natural right to the pursuit of happiness. Remember? Happiness is the product of liberty. And liberty is the product of property. And property in liberty is dominion over that property without control of government. Just as a reminder, these are fundamental principles. Article 1, Section 5, religious freedom. That all men, this section in your Missouri Constitution is the largest section I've seen in any Bill of Rights that I've read so far regarding religious liberty.
Is that good or bad?
The people of the state of Missouri, when you created your Constitution, went through extraordinary lengths to make sure that you knew the government had absolutely no footing whatsoever to be in control or involved in your religious conscience. It's so long I didn't even put the whole thing up there. But I wanted to show you some very important sections. Because remember, we're talking about how COVID and your government used COVID to destroy your rights and violate your state constitution. That all men and women have a natural and indefeasible right. These are strong words. To worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own conscience. Check this out. That no human authority can control or interfere with the rights of conscience. Can you get any more definite than that? When they told you could not have church, would that qualify as a control or interference with your right of conscience?
Of course.
When they told you could only have church with 10 people, would that interfere with your control or your interfere or control with your right of conscience?
Yep.
See, I don't know where your faith is, but my faith says we have to assemble together.
Yeah. Forsake not to assemble yourselves together.
There's an admonition on that, by the way. Forsake not the assembling of each other together, especially as you see the day approaching. We live in that especially, people.
Yeah.
My faith also requires human contact with people in my church. My faith requires that we not only pray, but we engage in the laying on of hands as the Bible instructs. We believe in the healing of people through God's Word. Is that not a control or an interference? Religious freedom, that to secure a citizen's right to acknowledge Almighty God according to the dictates of his or her own conscience, neither the state nor any of its political subdivisions shall establish any official religion, nor shall a citizen's right to pray or express his or her religious beliefs be infringed. How many of our churches would have shut down if our people actually read their Constitution? Freedom of speech. No law shall be passed impairing the freedom of speech, no matter by what means communicated. Your freedom of speech clause contains your freedom of press clause at the same time. So where we have in the U.S. Constitution freedom of speech, freedom of press, you guys have combined it into one. So no law shall be passed impairing the freedom of speech, no matter what means communicated. That's freedom of press. That every person shall be free to say, write, or publish, otherwise communicate whatever he will on any subject, being responsible for all abuses of that liberty. Remember, my liberty ends where yours begins. I cannot lie about you. I cannot damage you. That's criminal. But I am free to complain about my government. And a government that threatens me in that is not a just government, even if it's by implication. How about this one? Rights of peaceable assembling and petition. That the people have the right peaceably to assemble for their common good and to apply to those invested with the powers of government, for a redress of grievances by petition or remonstrance. When they told you that you could not meet in public in groups larger than 10, does that fit in that category up there? Because it says your right to peaceably assemble. You have that right. It is not a permission given to you by government, nor is it to be regulated or dictated. The only reason that you would not be allowed to meet in open air spaces in groups greater than 10 is because public assembly is the most powerful control of government. Public assembly is the most powerful control of government. And when government knows they're going to engage in unjust, unconstitutional activity, they can't let you publicly assemble. By the way, I think that's why they attack the church, too. Because throughout history, the organized, informed body of the church has always been the most powerful force against unjust government. Now, the church has also been, when it had an unholy marriage with government, has been a powerful force against the rights of the people. But when the church is in its proper role, organized and educated, it is the most powerful tool against an unjust government. And those who know they will be unjust have to stop that power. Missouri Constitution. James Madison says that you have a property in your opinions and the free communication of them. You have a property of peculiar value in your religious opinions and the profession and practice dictated by them. When they shut down your freedom of speech, your freedom of press, your right to peaceably assemble, when they infringe upon your ability and your right to petition the government for a redress of grievances, they're actually engaging in a seizure of your property without a warrant and without due process. Because Section 10 of your Bill of Rights says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Where was your due process when the executive orders came down? Where was your due process when the stay-at-home orders came down? Because you see, quarantine is for sick people. Healthy people are not quarantined.
Hello.
Healthy people are placed on house arrest. Where is the due process in a stay-at-home order that deprives you of your life, your liberty, and your property? It's required by your Constitution. All persons, Section 18, for injuries suffered in person. Oh, wait, sorry. That's not right. Unreasonable searches and seizures prohibited, contents and basis of warrants. Part of your due process is a warrant. But not just a warrant. Because this mirrors the U.S. Fourth Amendment. Let's read this. The people shall be secure in their persons, papers, homes, effects, and electronic communications. Wait a minute.
Is that right?
Is that right?
Yep.
It is? Okay. I've done so many of these, my state constitutions are starting to blend together. Because you see, this is almost identical to the Pennsylvania Constitution. And I thought maybe I forgot to edit the slide. The people shall be secure in their persons, papers, homes, effects, and electronic communications and data from unreasonable searches and seizures, and no warrant to search any place or seize any person or thing or access any electronic data or communication shall issue without describing the place to be searched or the persons or things to be seized or the data or communication to be accessed as nearly as may or may be, nor without probable cause supported by written oath or affirmation. There are conditions to a search and seizure. You should notice that you are not free from all searches and seizures. You're only free from unreasonable ones. The problem lies in understanding what a reasonable search and seizure is. Because the professors, the pundits, and the politicians will tell you that there needs to be discussion on the definition of what's unreasonable. And they've actually come up with one. The legal definition of unreasonable. Anybody want to know what the legal definition is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah? The legal definition of what is unreasonable is what a reasonable person would find reasonable under reasonable circumstances. So anything else is unreasonable. But if you read this, you already know the definition of a reasonable search and seizure because the section 15 tells you what it is. A reasonable search and seizure is one that contains a warrant that is based upon probable cause, that is supported by oath or affirmation, that particularly describes the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. You must have all 5 elements at the same time in order to have a reasonable search and seizure. Yours even gets more specific. Even electronic communications must have a warrant based upon probable cause for every single person. John Doe warrants that they use with the FISA things are expressly contrary to your Missouri Bill of Rights. Stay at home. Even the Supreme Court of the United States says that there is an inherent natural right to travel. It comes from Kent v. Dulles in 1958. You would think that a Supreme Court case on the books since 1958 would be on the tip of the tongues of those who worship courts and government. But the judicial supremacy that they rely on is only for their convenience. You know, when it goes against what they believe, then they conveniently ignore it. What about contact tracing? There are 2 means by which the government is attempting to engage in contact tracing. I say attempting to be generous. They're actually doing it. 2 ways. One is cell tower geo-tracking using your phone. Now what's interesting is the Supreme Court actually has an opinion that is directly on point to the government using a cell phone tower to geo-track you through your phone without your permission. It's Carpenter v. U.S. It's a case that was just decided in 2018. And the Supreme Court of the United States said that it is an invasion of your privacy for the government to go to the cell phone companies and get your data without a warrant. You see, the government tried to use this thing called the third-party doctrine. They said, we're not searching and seizing Albert's phone to find his location. We're going to a third party to get his information. Therefore, he has no degree or right or expectation of privacy in that third party. The Supreme Court said no. We live in a data-driven society. We can't even go there. You see, before data, banks held our records in a filing cabinet. We have always held that you had to get a warrant to go to the bank to get those records out of a filing cabinet. This is no different than a bank holding your records in a filing cabinet. It's just data. So you have to have a warrant specific for that information for each and every person in order to be a reasonable search and seizure. It is unconstitutional, and even more so by your Missouri Constitution, right? Because your search and seizure clause includes data. For your government to obtain your cell phone location to geo-track you without a warrant that specifically identifies you, specifically identifies the data that they're searching for, based upon probable cause, sworn to before a judge. Unless you give your permission. They don't need a warrant if you give permission. So guess what when you sign that paperwork to take that COVID test? Guess what's in that paperwork? In the fine print. Your permission.
Permission to be traced?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Permission to be traced. Now what's interesting is, by your permission, legally speaking, they can geotrack you. But contact tracing requires that they also geotrack everybody that you come into contact with, right? That's how we get this nifty little picture. Once your permission exists, they don't need a warrant for you, but they have to have a warrant for everybody else. You can't give permission for anybody else. The geo-tracking that they're doing for COVID contact tracing is expressly prohibited by your Missouri Constitution and expressly prohibited through Supreme Court opinion. The second way that they engage in contact tracing is through infrared technology. When the health department has this thing that kind of looks like a bullhorn, but they drive by your building, your business, your home, they can actually take an infrared picture of the inside of your house. They can see how many people are in your house. They can see how closely you're standing together, because it really gives like a little red image of bodies through the walls. They have drones that do this. This is not sci-fi. I have listened to every Board of County Commissioner meeting in my Hillsborough County, Florida. And when they talked about contact tracing, they talked about infrared. But the Supreme Court of the United States in Kylo v. U.S. in 2001 said that use of infrared technology is unconstitutional unless you have a warrant for every single building or person you're trying to trace. So flying drones over your businesses to see if you're complying with the limit of the number of people in your building is expressly unconstitutional by your state constitution and by the Supreme Court of the United States. Unless you give permission. Check this out. Article 1, Section 1, Missouri Constitution. The source of all power political. All political power is vested in and derived from the governor, the legislature,
The people.
the Supreme Court of Missouri, from the people. That all government of right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. What is the good of the whole? We talked about that. The pursuit of happiness. The good of the whole rests in the individual right.